Hey Soul Fairies, and welcome to class. So in today's tutorial we'll be looking at how to make a corset for a big bust. If you don't already know how to tighten your under bust, kindly refer to my video on how to make a princess dart pattern. There I went into details and I showed you how to tighten your under bust for any bust size. So essentially it's your under bust divided by 4, and then you are going to take out the excess like so. So having got this sorted, the next step is to measure your bust point to your under bust. So whatever figure you have at the end of the day, this is what we're going to be marking all around to create a perfect circle. Now guys, please, for a plus size, this circle usually goes off your pattern paper, but please do remember that it's only a guide. So I'm just showing you that it went off my pattern paper, but it's not a problem. It's easier for a smaller bust to have this circle perfect and within the pattern paper, but for a plus size it usually goes out. And never forget that I said that this is a guide. So having drawn this circle, what I'd like to do is to measure from this point up to know exactly where I want my corset to sit. Or you can also measure from your collarbone to where you want it to sit. So for me, I will be going up above the circle by 1 inch. So let's just quickly put the neckline for this so I can show you another way of doing that. So remember that we're trying to determine where we want our corset to sit. If you want it to be modestly done, then you have to go through this. So I divided my shoulder line by 2 and I connected it all the way to my bust point. Then on this circle I measured 1 inch on both sides. So measured 1 inch first, and then I measured 1 inch above the lines. So I'm going to measure 1 inch because I want my bust to be covered. So if you don't want this, you can leave that aside and work with the circle. So having marked that point, I'm going to use my curve and I am going to ruler rather, and I'm going to connect it all the way to my bust point. And I'm going to do the same for this side. So this is what it looks like at the end of the day. Remember I said if you don't want to conceal your bust, you can go lower. So here I marked 1/2 inch and I'm going to draw a straight line just for you to see it clearly, because we're going to be using this line. So for the second part, remember I said you can measure from your collarbone to where you want it to stop. So for us to get where our collarbone is, we're going to do the standard measurement of 3 inches for the neckline. So I'm just going to create that neckline of 3 by 3 inches. So from that 3 inches point, you're going to measure exactly where you want it to sit. And for me, I used 7 inches from my collarbone, and because I didn't want it to be so exposed. But do you, whatever works for you is just fine. So here remember we marked 1/2 inch earlier, so I'm just going to draw a line down and I'm going to connect it from that point back to the 1 inch above the chest line. So it will now look something like this. So we're going to be disregarding the other curve. So essentially you're just going to use your free hand and connect it all the way to the center front. So for this line here, where I'm going to be marking 1/2 inch below my chest line, I'll draw a line like so, and then I'm going to connect it from that 1 inch above, and I'm going to use my curve and connect it all the way to that 1/2 inch downwards. So this is just to create more ease there. So for this part, I like to measure my bust from my bust point to where I want the corset to sit. And this is also going to be like a guide, because I've seen people after making their corsets, their busts don't end, and I don't like it. So from this point I measured 1 inch, and I'm going to try to meet up with that measurement that I showed you guys. So I have something like so. It may not touch it exactly, but make sure you get as close to it as possible. So for this other side, I'm just going to draw that line like so, making sure everything meets up with our under bust. It's very essential, guys. Make sure it meets up. So for this part here, I'm just going to connect it with a smooth curve. So this is called truing, guys, where you check both patterns to make sure they are all properly aligned. And if it doesn't align, this is a chance for you to amend it before you cut your fabric. So for the bust dart, so for this bust dart I used 2.5 inches, and I'm just going to close this. But before I close it, I'm going to draw in the other part of this, and this is optional as well. I marked 2.5 inches all the way except for the center front where I marked 2 inches. So this is a 3-part cup. So I'm going to be aligning the marks in order to form the style line. So remember, I said this is totally optional. You can choose to leave this part out, but I wanted it to have a bit of oomph so to speak. So having got this sorted, the next thing for me to do is to measure where I want my strap to sit. So this is exactly where I want it to be. So I just marked a line right there, which you can measure later to know the length of the strap you are going to be needing for this corset. So when you're done doing this, kindly take your time and label accordingly. Now, labeling is very essential when it comes to corsets, because once you cut this thing out, it's very, very difficult to know which part is which, especially when you've cut it on your fabric. So take your time to make sure you label accordingly. So in order for me to close my bust dart, I had to open the side. So cutting this part open, I'm going to close my bust dart, and now I'm going to transfer it to my waist. So as you can see, the line is not really how it should be. So this also gives you the opportunity to correct the line as well. So I'm going to redraw this and make sure it runs smoothly. So this is what I had at the end of the day. So for this part, I'm going to also be trimming the sides just to make sure it runs smoothly, and there will be no need for loss of fabric when I'm cutting this. So for that point right there, if you notice that it's a bit pointy, it's up to you to smoothen things out. Make sure it runs smoothly, because if it doesn't run smoothly, you're going to be having a pointy bust. So this is me labeling accordingly, just the way I would remember: center front, side front, and so on. So moving over to the back, I'm going to be measuring like 1/4 inch on both sides of this dart, and I'm just going to connect it like so. So for the center back, I measured 1.5 inches all the way down, and I made sure the line ran from the side of my front all the way to that 1.5 inches on my center back. So this is what the back looks like for now. So because I'm going to be losing some fabric here so that I can add loops, I measured 3 inches upwards, and I measured 2 inches on the waistline. So this is totally up to you. If you want it to be a bit closed up, you may need to adjust the measurements right there. So for this, I measured my back neck, and I also marked my shoulder slope, measured what I had in front just to make sure, and confirmed it on the back. So this is me trying to put the strap for the back so that I remember to measure it and know exactly what I'll be needing to cut out. So I label that as strap. So I'm going to be cutting out the front first, and then I'll move over to the back to finish it up. So by the side, I usually like to have that beautiful curve. So I marked 1 inch on that side, and I made sure that it ran a smooth curve. So for the back, I'm going to be extending the back. Remember that this is a full top, and what I have on this pattern is my half block. So I extended the full full length of the top I wanted, and I measured accordingly, and I added all the necessary allowances and darts. So this is me extending the top. So this is what I have so far, and I also did exactly what I did to the front, the curve. So the back is usually simpler than the front. So this is what we have as the back, and of course I'll be labeling accordingly, and I'll be cutting this open by cutting off the darts. So this is my back and this is my front. So guys, this tutorial is pretty easy and is meant for big busts, and you can totally also use this for any bust size at all whatsoever. So this is me truing the cup area. I noticed that there was a little excess on one, so I made sure I cut off the excess right there. So please make sure you check out all your patterns before you cut them on your fabric. So having joined the upper part, I cut it out and it now looks like so, 3 parts. So this is why it's called 3-part corset. So guys, these are what I have so far, and this is the end result. This is a sneak peek. Please don't forget to watch our tutorial on how we put the patterns together and achieve this beautiful piece. Love you for watching. Please subscribe. Bye.